All right, and we are on the air. Everybody, welcome into the fifth dimension. And for today's show, I am joined by pharmacist and natural wellness expert, Lindsey Elmore. Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's truly a pleasure. And, I'm excited to talk to you because I myself have been very interested in learning more about your area of expertise. I'm very much about optimizing my own health and trying to be the best version of myself. And that's something I really preach on the show. And I feel like you come from a really unique background and perspective on the area of wellness. So, I'm excited to learn from you myself and, see where this conversation goes. I'd love to start just by you, talking about your own journey. And so you're a pharmacist, and I feel like there is almost sort of a stereotype around what a pharmacist does, what sort of role they play, but you almost defy that stereotype and go against the grain and really incorporate a lot of natural remedies and herbal medicines. And how did you find yourself in the position you are now taking that route? And was that your intention going into it?
No, not at all. So when I was younger, I always wanted to be a dancer and an actor and a singer, and I wanted that to
Mhm.
be my livelihood. And my mom was like, no, real job.
Mhm.
And she was a nurse, and because she was a single mom, she took me to work with her. And so I started just down that science path and realized that I enjoyed science and that there were a lot of, real jobs surrounding science.
Mhm.
And so I end up in pharmacy school. I have a degree in chemistry, and then I end up in pharmacy school. And during my first year of pharmacy school, I tear my ACL. And I end up, so when you tear your ACL, you get placed into a leg brace, and the
Mhm.
leg brace will lock your knee out straight. And so whereas normally when you walk, your knees bend,
Right.
you can't do that when your leg's locked out in a brace. And so every step I would take, I would hike my hip, and so my hips ended up, I didn't know that they were out of alignment. I just knew I couldn't sit on both of my sitting bones
Mhm.
anymore. So I end up in the chiropractor's office. I end up telling her, hey, doc, I have been battling with insomnia for about 3 months. And for the past month, I had not slept through the night. And I
Mhm.
thought, like, I may die. And so she refers me to the acupuncturist. And so I end up having my first experience with Chinese medicine. And I realized, and it opened my eyes, that there's a lot of different concepts of health that don't get taught in allopathic education. And so I kind of became that wacky pharmacist that started researching more about herbals and supplements and nutraceuticals and tried to really put it all together. And I also started to gain the awareness that there were concepts of medicine where the entire basic tenet of the practice is that the body wants to be well, which I don't think is taught in
Mhm.
allopathic medicine. In allopathic medicine, it's the body is always sick. And that's the only time we engage with the medical system is when we are sick.
Right.
And so I became increasingly frustrated with how I worked with patients and how I saw people who wanted to be better, but were constantly just given this endless string of medicines and people who just, it was like, okay, well, you can change this, but you're going to have to change your diet. You're going to have to change your exercise routine. You're going to have to change your social connectivities
Right.
and all of these things. And people just said, I don't want to do it. And I then became very, very angry when I recognized that, oh, wait, this is a big system built to keep people very, very sick, fearful of being sick. Our
Mhm.
food system is broken in a way that keeps people constantly just indoctrinated with the cheapest and least healthy foods imaginable. And so I just thought, I'm going to do something different. So
Mm.
it started with me recognizing that I don't want to eat genetically modified food, and I don't want monoculturalization, and I don't want to be a part of a food system that makes people very, very sick. That started my journey for health and wellness. And then, I know this sounds so cliche, but I sat down and smelled an essential oil, and
Hmm.
I recognized in an instant that my life was about to change. I became immediately driven to research and learn as much as I possibly could
Hmm.
about essential oils, and to recognize that the chemical properties of the oils are very, very similar in the way that you can speak about them and the way that you speak about medications. So I started teaching online about essential oils. People went crazy and loved my online teaching and the way that I approached teaching science. One of the things that I think is so wonderful about the schooling of a pharmacist is pharmacists really know how to talk to people.
Hmm.
That's part of our education and training, is how do you speak to people and explain things in ways that are simple, tangible, and easy for people to understand. And so I applied those skills in the natural medicine realm, and I've continued my journey. Even this fall, I am taking more additional training in functional medicine, wanting to understand more about physiology and understand. I want to remember all of the things that I learned that now I see are so critically important.
Mm.
So it was a long journey that began with me tearing my ACL and recognizing and picking up pieces of information along the way, and really understanding that before there was allopathic medicine, there were ancient practices of wellness that kept people well before we even had pharmaceuticals. I mean,
Right.
pharmaceuticals as we know it are only about 100, 120 years old. Well, Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, shamanic medicine, energy medicine are ancient practices that date back since the dawn of time. As
Right.
early as we have human history, we have the use of herbal medicines. And to say that just because it's 2020 and we have all of these medications, that herbal remedies are stupid and they don't work and there's no point in taking a multiple vitamin every day is asinine. And I just decided I wanted to be a voice to say, hey guys, I know you have options as far as multiple, you have 15, 20 medications that you can use to treat your diabetes,
Hmm.
or you can just change your diet.
Right. Right.
You know?
And I,
So I just said, look, health and wellness is in your hands. However you want to do it, it's up to you. But we do have good evidence that reducing your stress, getting excellent sleep, eating real food, having amazing social connections, and exercise, they actually do work, and they can keep you healthy, and you
right.
don't have to be on this endless reel of medications in order to stay well.
Right, definitely. And you brought up so many good points and different avenues that I'd love to jump into. With the system itself in terms of, the Western model. I've always noticed on myself that it seems to be more about treating particular symptoms as opposed to diving into what the root cause is of certain illnesses. Like, you brought up type 2 diabetes, for example. Well, what's the cause of diabetes in particular? It's generally from an unhealthy lifestyle. Certainly, people have predispositions to certain diseases, and, there's not much. Well, there is a lot you can do to prevent that from, coming on, and that's through healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, moving your body, trying to live in a space of not stressing and fearful all the time. And I feel like we've definitely lost the almost individual accountability of our own wellness in a way, with how the model is sort of set up. Like, we don't set up health. We don't set up, like, I'm a school teacher, and we don't teach optimizing our health. That's something that, I mean, we certainly have. I think now the requirements are you take one gym class in your 4 years of high school, and you take one health class, but it's not something that's enforced and emphasized, when in reality, that's going to be what brings you success in life, is your health. I mean, health is
Well,
wealth.
well, and I mean, here's the thing. People expect that just all of a sudden you're going to wake up healthy one day. And it's
Right.
like, well, no. How long did it take you to get into this body? I don't
Right.
understand why you think it's going to just magically change tomorrow. And my mom is like a perfect example of the kind of people we're talking about. She tells me the other day, she's like, I'm not eating desserts now because I've been told I have prediabetes. And I'm like, Mom, I can get you out of prediabetes in a month, maybe 6 weeks, but
Mhm.
you have to do what I say. And she's like, nope, I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, okay, well, enjoy your pre-diabetic progression to diabetes, and I'll meet you in the metformin aisle. So there's only so much that health and wellness coaches, teachers can do. Ultimately, it's up to you to say, am I actually willing to show up for myself
Mhm.
and come on, can you sacrifice 5 minutes for meditation? Can you give yourself the permission to break with what we consider to be a typical American diet that is based on meat and dairy, and say, like, you know what? I know it's not popular, and I know some people will make fun of me, but I'm going to eat plants for this meal.
Mhm.
Um, it is certainly, people have genetic predispositions to disease, but we also have epigenetics that allows us to help our body only express the genes that are healthy for us. And so it's a series of choices. And I know, for the listeners out there that get so frustrated with people like me who say, health is in your hands, because there are people who have genuinely tried everything and are still sick. And I ask people the question, why do you need this illness? What purpose is it serving for you? And that's not my question. That question was posed to me when I tore my ACL. A shaman asked me. She's a shaman and a pharmacist and
Mhm.
practices shamanic medicine inside of her job at a pharmacy, which is amazing. And she asked me, why did you need this injury? What is going on to where you actually needed this injury? Because we don't just have challenges to our health for no reason. There is a reason for it. And we even use it in our common language. I just needed a break. Well,
Mhm.
if you just need a break, that may come in the form of a broken finger or a broken something. I remember I really badly tore my calf muscle a few years ago. And leading up to that injury, I just kept telling people, like, I just need to rest. I just feel like I need a break. I need a break. Well, guess what? I broke. I
Right.
broke. And so your body is talking to you. And it's one of those things, your body talks to you in ways that start out as just like hey, I'm here, let's take care of this.
Right.
But if you don't listen and you don't take action, it's going to become a full on assault. And so, if you're eating gluten and dairy every day, and you see that you have bowel movements that are either diarrhea or they're really smelly, and you just don't deal with that. Okay, fast forward 5 years and you're questioning, why do I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis? Why do I have autoimmune disease? And it's like, well, your body's been telling you for years
Right.
not to eat that stuff. And listen, unhealthy behaviors are undeniably fun, delicious.
Right.
They're all the things, but we cannot overcome thousands of years of evolution and our body being built to work a certain way, and then just decide we're going to cast all of that out and we're going to be able to eat as much as we want all of the time of these rich, decadent foods that we did not have access to 150 years ago, and let alone 3,000 years ago. It doesn't work. And so if we say, okay, I am going to do my best to feed my body and to exercise and work my body in a way that I hope and pray will be beneficial for me.
Mhm.
And if you do decide to go out and, have the amazing steak and butter dinner with the mashed potatoes, you better do it with joy. You
Right.
better do it with a lot of joy and a lot of understanding that this is something that is special. And when you eat foods that are not the best for you, slow down and savor them and allow it to be almost a meditation as you eat,
Right.
and allow your healthy food to be a part of the meditation too. I mean, another thing that is so simple to get you ready to live your healthiest life: go 12 hours a day without eating food. I mean, you're asleep for 8 of them, or you
Right.
should be. And so just saying, okay, I'm not going to eat 2 hours before bedtime or 2 hours after I wake up, is one of the simplest and easiest ways for us to get back and really just identify with, this is how we were evolutionarily designed to eat and function and be. And so the more that we can get back to just those simple things, the better off we're going to be. And so for listeners that are out there that are frustrated already by listening to me, because they're like, I have tried everything in the book and I still have this going on in my life. Okay, well, let's talk about emotions. Let's talk about how our emotions can poison us. In Chinese medicine, there are 3 different concepts of the root cause of disease.
Mhm.
So there's external causes, but there are internal causes, and the internal causes are all based in emotions. And so internal causes of disease are anger, worry,
Mhm.
sadness, fear, shock, pensiveness, and joy. So identifying, okay, I hear it from people all the time: my thyroid just doesn't work. And I'm like, well,
Right.
what do you want to say? What are you holding right there? Why is this stifled? Say it. Just get it out. And so identifying the emotional root causes of disease, I think, is critically important as well. And I think that every disease does have emotional components to it.
Mm. Absolutely. And I would agree with you 100%. And I think all, regardless of whether it is in terms of the foods we eat, or, we have diseases that manifest, come up, it's about listening to our body and understanding trying to become more in touch with ourselves and who we are on a deeper level. I very much have taken the approach for myself that food is medicine. Like food, what I eat is ultimately going to be how I feel, how I respond to the world, whatever. Like I certainly can't control everything that's going to happen to me, but I can put myself in the best position to be who I want to be. And a large part of that is going to be the foods I eat. So I don't do well with like the processed grains and um, I don't eat a lot. I can't really have a lot of gluten. I can't really do dairy. Like those are food groups that just do not work. Like I've learned through experience, they don't sit well with me. So I'm going to limit that. And if I have it once in a while, savor it. Take it as a treat, if you will. Cause I mean, I could demolish an entire pizza, like if I wanted to, but if I did that every day, that would not spell good things. So I I feel like the approach you're talking about with like Chinese medicine and sort of the more shamanic traditions, it almost feels like it is about connecting with the self as opposed to I feel a lot of things in Western society beyond just pharmaceuticals and medicines, it is all very externalized. Like life is very externalized in a lot of ways, but I feel like when we take it back to that shamanic practice, you're really integrating like who you are on a deeper level. And I think doing that potentially scares a lot of people because we really mask ourselves in a lot of ways. um I mean, do you have examples of, I know a lot of people love to see like science backing like how, like, let's say shamanism, for example, of specific plant medicines or essential oils or just these sort of herbal approaches. A lot of people will dismiss them thinking there isn't, like, all of the Western medicine, we have the science, we have the case studies, all of, scientific method. Is the science starting to begin to back these medicines that we have known for thousands of years when we didn't have the, scientific method back then, but they sort of had this intuitive knowing that it worked? Is the science starting to meet that, where, that side of it? And like, what have you found, I mean, for yourself to be, it could be specific essential oils or supplements or, medicines that you've worked with that are proving to be really effective?
Well, here's the thing. In order to do a large randomized control trial that's multi-centered with thousands of patients and all the things, you got to have a lot of money.
Right.
And nobody has a vested interest in like proving that celery juice is going to be a transformative experience. Nobody is out there bankrolling clinical trials about how to come off of medications.
Right.
And so here's the thing. What science has done well is helping us to quantify and look at, okay, well, when I make this intervention, this is what happens. But what science does terribly is looking at, okay, well, I am going to follow someone for 25 years and detail their every health and wellness practice to determine if it is safe or effective, or does it make them healthy? Does it make them not?
Mhm.
Here's the thing too. Industry has great interest in sowing seeds of doubt. The tobacco industry wrote the playbook. And if you look back into old internal memos from tobacco industry, the executives said, we don't sell tobacco. What we sell is doubt.
Hmm.
We don't know, or is smoking cigarettes harmful for you? Well, I mean, come on, people. You're burning a plant and inhaling it into your lungs. It
Right.
can't be that good for you. And it's not necessarily the tobacco that's the bad part. It's the tar and the formaldehyde and the toluene and the everything that's added into it to make nicotine inherently more addictive. It's already one of the most addictive substances in the world because of the way that it fluxes into our brain so rapidly. But you then fast forward and you look at doubt surrounding anything and everything. Okay. So I can find you a clinical trial to tell you that we should all be 100% vegan all of the time. I can find you that clinical trial. I can also find you a clinical trial that says, nope, we should all eat paleo nonstop. I can find you a clinical trial that says yoga is the best way to exercise. I can find you a clinical trial that says high intensity interval training is the best way to exercise. There's doubt surrounding everything. And it's not just the small issues. You know, I say small in air quotes because knowing how to eat appropriately is not a small thing. But you think about the big things too, climate change. How much doubt is there surrounding the discussion of climate change? And it's not that scientists are just out there being like, well, I don't know if climate change is real, and if it is real, if humans are, no, they're getting paid by mega industries to say this. They're called product defense specialists. So product defense specialists will get hired when the NFL says, playing professional football doesn't cause concussions. Like, you've got 300-pound men ramming their heads into each other every single day as a part of their job. Like, come on. But these industry specialists get paid mega bucks. You look at the opioid crisis. You know, the FDA really failed the American public because they allowed labeling to say that OxyContin's not addictive. That was on the original label of OxyContin. Right. Well, then the Sackler family at Purdue Pharma wrote the book on how to entice physicians to write more prescriptions and get more drugs, get more sales, you know. And if you look at the top prescribers of OxyContin in the country over the past 10 years, all of them were paid mega bucks by pharmaceutical companies to go and prescribe, and then all of a sudden, well, hey, we're going to send you on an all expense paid trip to a 5-star resort in Hawaii. Bring your whole family. While you're there, you're going to give a presentation to a room of 100 physicians, and you're going to tell them these things. We see that with opioids, we see it with new medications, we see it with vaccines, we see it with the meat and dairy industry. I mean, the dairy industry crafted the narrative that in order to be healthy, you need 2 to 3 servings of calcium a day. And the best place to get calcium is from cow's milk. No, it's not. It is absolutely not. Number one, calcium is completely ineffective without the concomitant dosing of magnesium and vitamin K2 and vitamin D. And so if you really want to get the best source of calcium, your calcium source should also contain magnesium and vitamin K2 and vitamin D. Well, okay, let's look at where do we get that? Well, one of the brilliant things about eating plant-based food and plant-based calcium is that all plants contain chlorophyll. That's the molecule that we learned about in elementary school that makes plants green. Right. Regardless of if plants are green or not, they contain chlorophyll because that is the way that they transform carbon dioxide into oxygen, and it's the way that they power themselves. Well, at the center of a chlorophyll molecule is this beautiful bit of magnesium, and it helps to hold the chlorophyll in place. So if you're eating something like a dark leafy green vegetable, you're getting calcium, you're getting magnesium, and you're getting vitamin K2. Well, that is a definite better source of calcium than dairy, which is arguably cruel
Mm-hmm.
to animals, and arguably anti-feminist because of the outright enslavement of female animals. It's a processed food that we didn't eat this 100 years ago. 100 years ago, if your great grandmother drank milk, guess what? It wasn't homogenized. It was raw. It was full of probiotics. And here's the other thing. If you think about what cow's milk, breast milk, milk that comes from mammals is intended to do, it is intended to help a baby put on weight as quickly as possible.
Right.
Well, how is that healthy for an average adult, where the average American puts on 2 pounds a year? So over the course of 10 years, that's 20 additional pounds. The last thing that we need is a diet that is rich in a food that is intended to make us fat as quickly as possible. It also is inflammatory. Also, the consumption of meat and dairy shifts our gut bacteria towards bacteria that are more likely to produce a substance called TMAO. And TMAO is one of the most reactive species that we have, that goes out, generates free radicals. Then you've got
Mm-hmm.
inflammation. And in the best of my estimation, inflammation is basically the root cause of every single disease. And so, is the science getting better? Not really. Do you have to have science to tell you that inhaling an essential oil has the capacity to help you calm down? Probably not. You don't have to have it. So, one of the things that is critically important, and something that honestly needs to change in the way that we educate people, is who wrote the manual that the only way that science is valid is when you have a large randomized control trial with a multivariate analysis and 1,000 patients that do it. Because trust me, a statistician can take that data and spin it any way they want. So
Mm-hmm.
be very wary when a study comes out and it's like, whatever it is, eating red meat causes colon cancer. It does, friends. I love you. I mean it. But processed food, processed pork and beef, is a World Health Organization class 1 carcinogen. It is on the same level as exposure to toxic benzene, to asbestos. It's that same thing. So we're having bologna on the shelf or having salami on the shelf, we just think of as a food, but it is a
Right.
class 1 carcinogen. Why the heck we feed it to young children makes no sense. None. But yet, I could take that same diet, I could take that same data that says, okay, processed meat, bar none, causes colon cancer. Here's the 40 studies.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is the meat industry will hire somebody who is an industry defense, a product defense specialist. They come in and do what's called a post hoc analysis, where basically they take the data and run the numbers again. That's a major problem. That is why in ethical science, you are required to state how are you going to do your analysis before you begin.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep coming back in and just, okay, well, here's a post hoc analysis that shows something different. And then you get these people that have a lot of fancy letters behind their name that will come in and tell you, no, meat doesn't cause colon cancer. Well, yeah, okay, great. All right. So Is the science good? I mean, sure, I could prattle off lots of studies right now that show you that inhaling essential oils can decrease anger and frustration. I can talk to you about how when babies are bathed in essential oils that they laugh more and make better eye contact with their parents. I could go through and tell you, "Hey, here's a study of more than 200,000 patients followed for more than 4 million patient years that shows that plant-based diets reduce the risk of contracting diabetes." But yet, why does the American Diabetes Association still not recommend a plant-based diet? And it's because they're all funding each other, you know?
Right.
And I don't mean to sound cynical. I just mean for the listeners to take away that we do not have to be told how to be healthy. We
Mm.
don't. It is a matter of us quieting ourselves enough to listen internally and decide for ourselves, what does my version of health look like? And that is irrespective of anyone's opinion, of any published research. Because another thing that's been really frustrating about this year, so you know, pharmacists are really good at, we didn't get paid like all the docs did. I don't know.
Mhm.
We didn't have the ability to get swayed by industry in the same way that physicians did.
Right.
And we're also extraordinarily skilled at analyzing data around medications. And so this year has been a year unlike any other in the spread of misinformation as real information, of
Mhm.
data as being meaningful, when it's like, wait a minute, you guys. I mean, I remember when the drug remdesivir came out, and and don't throw eggs at me, people, throw tomatoes instead. And there's Dr. Fauci on the news, and he's just like, remdesivir is going to save lives. And I'm calling all my pharmacist buddies, and I'm like, is this guy reading the same studies that we're reading? Because none of these studies reach statistical significance for helping to reduce the risk of death. And
Right.
we were all screaming at the top of our lungs and just going like, guys, this is not true. This drug will not reduce your risk of death. In fact, it's a $35,000 drug that, when you take it over the course of 10 days, shortens your symptoms of coronavirus by about a day. You want to spend $30,000 on that, or do you just want to lay up in bed for an extra day? You know, and I
Right.
don't say that to be, again, I'm not being flippant. It's just, this is what the data actually says. You know, we look at oseltamivir, or the brand name is Tamiflu, and people will be like, okay, I've got to take Tamiflu because now I've got influenza. Tamiflu does not reduce your risk of death from influenza. In fact, all it does is shorten your symptoms by about a day and a half, but you have about a 50% chance of having some kind of adverse effect. And we talk about the way you memorize it in pharmacy school is Tamiflu causes the tummy flu. So it's
Uh,
like, okay, you're going to take a drug that's going to cause you to have massive diarrhea and cramps and potentially fecal incontinence, and you might vomit and you're going to be sick. Or you can just lay around with your flu for an extra day and not have to go through the work to take the medication. And so science and research papers, unfortunately, are not everything. And this year has been extraordinarily tough on me,
mhm.
because one of the things I realized is, in a lot of ways, science doesn't matter. It matters how things are portrayed on the news. And unfortunately, because America is one of only two industrialized nations that allows direct to consumer advertising for pharmaceutical agents, it skews journalistic integrity.
Right.
If I know that a certain company has given $1 billion to my network, it behooves me to present their messaging. And you watch it on the news. I mean, you can find highlight reels of basically every news commentator saying the exact same script. It's the exact same script. And the script is never, hey guys, we're facing a virus that we've never seen before. So in order to help prevent viral spread, we're going to need everybody to eat well, exercise, sleep well, to stay away from sick people. What a novel concept. And we're going to need everybody to really wash their hands and focus on getting outside, because we see that people who are more likely to die have reduced levels of vitamin D. You know, when the news was all like, wow, this paper shows that vitamin C can be used in high doses, it's like, yeah, yes, it can.
Right.
And it can be used in high doses for every infection known to man. It's not newsworthy, friends. And so I this year's been tough on me, just from the recognition that like science doesn't matter as much as I thought it once did. But now I'm okay with it. And I'm okay with just saying, like, I don't need a study to show me that intermittent fasting and staying away from inflammatory foods and having amazing social connection and eating primarily plants is healthy. I know it's healthy for me, you know, and I don't have to have a study to show me that. I could prattle off a lot of studies for you, but my advice to the listeners is always stay in touch with your inner voice, and your inner voice will never lie to you, because in my best estimation, that still small voice inside of us is God speaking to us. And so if your highest and greatest good inside of you is saying, hey, perhaps that fifth, gin and tonic on a Tuesday is not a great idea, listen to that. Listen to that, but you have to quiet your mind enough to hear the voice.
Absolutely. And that's where we get into the, the topic of meditation and mindfulness. And I have my meditation practitioner certificate, and I didn't need somebody to tell me that it was beneficial to sit down and quiet the mind and meditate. And, you touched on so many good points, in particular about the lack of transparency, and coming just from a observer's perspective. I'm not ingrained in the medical field whatsoever. I see that by trusting my own, I'm someone who's gotten to the point of trusting my own intuition and sort of looking to understand different perspectives and do my own research. I see that lack of transparency that exists even, at the top levels of the CDC and the FDA, and all of the conflicting, the narrative that's portrayed is one that is of fear and not optimizing true wellness. Because if it were, the coronavirus is a perfect example of, we would be seeing on the news, the front page would be, here is how to optimize your immune system and build up your immunity. So since that is, it's been, I don't even know how many months it's been at this point, 5 or 6 months, we're in September, I still yet to see a single article talking about that. So it's at the point where I feel the same way. Like, well, the science and these people who do these studies, I guess it's okay. I'm not going to listen. I'll listen to what they're saying, but I know that I am my own guidance system in a way. And I think a message that people could really need to hear is to learn to trust their internal process, trust that voice, trust what feels right for your body. If you have specific needs that you need to meet, okay, what is stopping you from meeting those needs? What is stopping, what is it that prevents you from sitting and listening to that voice? Is it fear? Is it the idea that we're going to have to change our lifestyle? And I think you can learn a lot about yourself in that process, and a willingness to confront that process. But I think the fear narrative is so prevalent, and it's it's been shown to be so prevalent based on what's going on right now. That idea of taking that meditative approach, I think, is one I think it's picking up steam. And I think a lot of people are starting to trust their own guidance in a way. And you see a lot of movements, just the fact that we're having this conversation, I think it shows that it is a more of a, not fully mainstream idea, but more and more people are learning to do it. But it's almost a journey into discovering what practices work best for the individual. My meditative practice is going to look probably different than yours, but that's okay. And we can learn tips from one another and learn different ways to quiet the mind and find the right healthy foods and just explore. I feel like it's a explorative process, if you will. And we don't need that scientific study to show meditation works, or even though there are hundreds you could cite.
Again, yeah. I mean, I could sit and prattle off all kinds of information about how meditation shrinks the size of your amygdala and expands the size of your hippocampus, making you better at managing emotional regulation. But why do we have to know these things? I mean, the thing is, if we really take a step back and say, if you poll a million people about what makes people healthy, it basically comes down to, okay, well, the food that I eat, as well as the water that I drink, how I manage stress, how I exercise, and how much love and support that we have is critically important. And that's really that's it. That's all we got, I mean, sleep plays into there, but that's one way that we manage stress. And so here's the other thing. If the media and the government really, really wanted us all to be happy and healthy, we would not have a news cycle that is so blatantly just here to scare us. My partner and I, we have a game that we play. It's called the Fear Tactic of the Week. And we just, he watches the news. I've basically given up on watching the news. This year was just like, okay, and we're done with this. Uninstalled Facebook from my phone. You want to reduce stress in your life? Take Facebook off your phone. Yes. It'll be the greatest thing you've ever done. It's like, it's life-changing. And even now, the fear narrative, it continues. And it started from the very beginning. If you think back to the very, very beginning of all of this back in March, what was the narrative? We can't get back to life as we know it until we have a vaccine. Well, friends, we've never successfully made an RNA vaccine in our entire history of vaccine creation. Right. The time that we did, it was for swine flu back in the 60s. Go watch the videos of how well that went. RNA vaccines are an extraordinarily difficult thing to design because your RNA has to talk to your DNA. And we look at now this insane timeline of like, we must have a vaccine within 18 months. Okay, well, the average vaccine takes about 7 years to create. Right. And so why are we going to shove this out the door? And to make it worse, we're seeing right now, it's like, okay, everybody's got to get a flu shot. Everybody's got to get a flu shot. And it's like, wait a minute, friends. We have multiple studies that are not just studies, but they're from the Department of Defense. They're from the Pentagon. Like, they're from really reliable sources, if you believe in reliability of sources at all, that says that flu vaccination increases the risk of contracting coronavirus through a process called viral interference. And so I think back, and I remember when back in March, everybody was saying, what Trump asked the panel of scientific experts, why can we not just use the flu vaccine to help prevent the contraction of coronavirus? And everybody was like, ha, 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 what an idiot. Then what do we see? We see the mandated across the entire state of California, across the entire state of Massachusetts, saying every man, woman, and child must receive a flu shot because we're trying to reduce the risk of influenza-like illnesses. It's like, wait a minute. 3 months ago, that was a joke. That
Right.
was a joke. And now, in order to go to school in California, it's mandated by law that I no longer have body autonomy. I think of, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to get political, but it's just the layers of problems are just so apparent. You think about when Kamala Harris was grilling Brett Kavanaugh during his Supreme Court confirmation hearings, and she grilled him and was
Hmm.
like, can you think of a time when the government has the power to mandate control over anything that happens to a man's body? And the point that she's trying to make is that women should have legal and fair access to safe abortions.
Hmm.
That's the point she's making. Now, fast forward a couple of months, you can't go to school in California. Every child in Massachusetts is being told, nope, you have to have this vaccine or you cannot go. I was educating my friend who's pregnant, and I was like, so what do you want to have happen when your baby is born? And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, do you want them given the Hep B vaccine at birth? Do you want them to be given these screening procedures and blah, blah, blah? Do you want them given or the glucose test? Do you want all of this to happen? And she's like, no, I don't know that I want any of that, but I'll have to opt out of it. And I'm like, she's like, no, she said, I'll have to opt in. And I'm like, no, friend, you have to opt out. This
Right.
is what is considered standard medical procedures. And so I'm against forced medical procedures of all kinds. I don't think that anything should ever be forced on anyone because it's bad juju. It's just bad karma to
Yeah.
say, I don't want this thing, and to be told, well, you have to have it in order to have employment, to go to school. That's not fair. And who made that rule up? Who
Right.
made that rule up to where, and the whole thing, the studies that they're doing at Yale right now, oh my gosh, how do we craft media narratives that make
Oh
people
yeah.
feel guilty enough
I saw that. Yeah.
to do things that we know don't make sense? I mean, friends, you may hate me after this, and that's okay, but in our heart of hearts, in our deep, deep heart of hearts, do we really think that social distancing and wearing masks is the way to make our country healthy? You look at the entirety of the industrialized world, the United States is the only country that has had this extended, ongoing, months long problems with the coronavirus. Well,
Right.
that says something is wrong with our food system, with our medical system, with healthcare disparities and access to healthcare. And it's critically important that we take a step back and go, okay, well, if masking isn't working, if it did work, we would not still be 6 months into having problems,
Right.
versus if you look at somewhere like Sweden that never shut down anything ever, never mandated their citizens. They said, hey guys, there's a new virus going around. And so if you're high risk, you might want to stay home,
Right.
and so we have to take a step back and just go, does this make sense? And who made up these rules? And I think that it is very important for us to take a step back and go, what do I know really makes me healthy? Access to super healthy food, access to very clean water, access to a diet that is rich in nutrition, good soil that hasn't been just decimated from every nutrient that it once had, exercise and being able to move my body, being able to still my mind, and being able to have amazing social connections. And I feel like if we could spend 15 minutes a day with that on the news of just saying like, hey guys, did you know that meditation can make you more resilient to getting fearful about what we're talking about? Because nobody is talking on the news about just how badly fear destroys your immune system. It weakens the immune system. It damages the cardiovascular system. It causes ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, decreases fertility, impairs memory, causes, long-term fear causes fatigue and clinical
Right.
depression and PTSD. Like the list goes on and on. So the fact that we're facing these unprecedented times and what we're doing is exposing people to a continuous cycle of fear is unacceptable in my opinion. It's completely unacceptable. And we're asking people to do things that don't make sense.
Mm,
I mean, we have studies back from 2015 that says that wearing cloth mask increases the risk of influenza-like illnesses and should never be used in healthcare. Why did we
right.
just throw that out the window? Why did we just throw all of this out the window? When I see people wearing, anyways, it's a hot buttery mess is what
Right.
I'm trying to
Definitely. No,
say.
I definitely agree. And I'll say you definitely probably gained brownie points with the listeners because these are topics I bring up, and something the fear narrative is something that I've been questioning since the beginning of this. Like, why? What is it? What is good about living in a place of fear? There's nothing. There's nothing
Yeah.
that you're going to take from that, and
Yep.
you're not going to be able to increase your health when, And I think it was on it's on Instagram. Like I've tried to be vocal about getting people to stop living in fear and like make this an opportunity to uh, take control of your health and your wellness. Like make this a time of like, oh, you know what? I see that this is going around. I want to be healthy. I want to be thriving. So let me take control of my health. And it's incredible to see sort of the response of just promoting that once in a while. But um, I think that's the message that needs to get out to the mainstream, and it's one that we're approaching 6 months at this point, and if you look back years and years, I mean, there's still, if you looked at the news, the the pandemic has just sort of heightened what has already existed in a way.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's, I think, a great opportunity for people to take control of their health, their wellness. And when you do that, that really allows you to take control of your life. As I've found out for myself, like I didn't realize the level of empowerment I would feel just by optimizing my wealth or health and wellness, and what that
Mm-hmm.
actually means to my creativity, my feelings of like confidence, and just being who I want to be. Like just the simple eating, exercising, and for me, like meditation and some breath work, I feel like I'm almost, I always refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualization, that top stage of being the best version of oneself. I think that's how you reach it, and it
Absolutely.
takes that level of empowerment. So
Well, and I think the other thing is w- in certain concepts of why are we here,
mm,
um, is that we're here to work out our dharma. We're here to work out why. I don't know if you believe in. I don't like the word reincarnation, but I think that
mhm,
our souls have been here since the dawn of time. We can
right.
think back to our Stardust days, and I think that we do ascend to, call it heaven, call it an astral plane, call it whatever you want. Um, and we have choices about, okay, well, I want to come back and I want to continue to work on my dharma and I want to continue to craft the greatest good that I can. And if we live in fear, and if we live in a place where we don't work out why we're here on earth, we just set ourselves up for having to come back and do it all over again.
Right.
We set ourselves up to, okay, well, I didn't fully self actualize in that lifetime. Let me try again. And so let's all be dedicated to how do we create the best possible versions of ourselves, because as we do that, we create the best possible version of the world.
Right. Absolutely. And the collective is really just it's a larger scale of what's happening at the individual level. So if individuals can all begin to self-actualize and be the best versions of themselves, we're going to have a world that reflects that. And I think we see a
Yeah.
lot of that chaos in the world because there's a lot of internal chaos. There's a lot of uh, there there's a lot of the lack of self-actualization. But
Oh, yeah.
I think the tides are turning. I hope the tides are turning. I would
I
like.
mean, here's the thing. The world is never going to go back to what it was. The world
Right.
has forever been changed. However, I firmly believe and I put my hope and my faith in the fact that we are going to come out better on the other side of this than when we began. I think that right now is a difficult time. So in Chinese interpretations of God, there's the Earth Mother and then
Mhm.
the Heavenly Father. And Heavenly Father is like the disciplinarian that says, this is happening and you don't get to know why. And that's kind of where we are, which is really frustrating. And it can seem like the universe is like, okay, it kind of feels like we want to challenge God about why is this happening? Why is this happening? But in Chinese understandings and in the I Ching and in oracle tools, when Heavenly Father says, this is happening and you don't get to know why, and it seems like it's that disciplinarian kind of action, our only choice is to take refuge in Earth Mother.
Mm.
And so if that is what I can do right now, is become even more grounded, even more connected. If I can not only in just concept, but actually physically dig my hands in the dirt and grow food and be a part of raising the earth energy. Whew, let's all do some of that right now, because it is frustrating when you don't understand what's going on in the universe. And Lord knows this year has been a
Right.
great example of not knowing what the heck is going on.
Right. Right. And that's a beautiful point to make. And like, we can we can really contribute to the betterment, the evolution of the world and the planet and to ourselves. And if you look at the span of the universe, it's just evolution taking place and growing and changing. And I think embracing the unknown of that is
Yeah.
what's going to move us forward. And that's a beautiful point. And we're at about an hour. That might be a beautiful point to leave the listeners with, to
Oh,
really
perfect.
to really reflect on that. And I think
Yeah.
everybody can take something and personalize that and take something from it. And um, this hour flew by for me personally. Like, I'm sitting here, I looked at the clock, I'm like, wow, it's already like that's it's unbelievable when you have great conversations like that. So
That's why
Lindsey,
we podcast.
it's
That's why
why
we
we
do it.
exactly. And I've taken a lot from this myself that I'm going to reflect on. And so I hope the listeners did as well. Is there anything you would leave the listeners with, and where they can also go and find the great work you're doing, and where they can interact with you, and all
Absolutely.
that good stuff?
So you can find me at www.lindseyelmore.com, LandSeyelmore. And I'm at Lindsey Elmore on Facebook and Instagram, and at Dr. Lindsey Elmore on Pinterest. And if you head to lindseyelmore.com/free tools, there are tons of free downloads there. There's a 100-day gratitude journal that I think your listeners would really love. And there's also a 7-step guide to how to make choices about your health and wellness. So go and check out the free tools over on lindseyelmore.com. And just remember, friends, when it comes to health and wellness, there's no right choice. There's no wrong choice. There's only your choice. And whatever choice you make, feel good about it. and don't let anybody tell you that your choice was wrong.
I absolutely love that. And